Welcome to the NEBRC presentation on denial of service and distributed denial of service. So just a quick rundown of what we're going to cover in this presentation. What is our data? What is a DDoS or DDoS attack? Why people are going to do it? Some real-world examples and a live stream of it happening. Firstly, when I'm discussing our data, we need to have an idea of what our data is, just so that everyone can understand when we're talking about it. When I say a megabit, a megabyte, a gigabyte, some people won't understand at all what that means. Whereas if I say wine or liquid, because that is what I'm going to be using as an analogy for this presentation, everyone knows what it looks like. Everyone knows that you can only pour a liquid out of a bottle at a certain speed. And for this, we're going to use wine for the predominant amount of our presentation. So our wine bottle is our network connection. We only have a certain amount of speed that wine can be poured out of a bottle. If we have a lot of people trying to access wine from the same bottle at the same time, it goes very slowly and fills up each person's glass very slowly. And when I'm talking about glasses, I'm talking about our individual users. I'm talking about the person that is trying to access our website, the person that is trying to remote in from home and access the file storage where the group projects are stored. All of these I'm going to be referring to as services. Anything that is internet facing, anything that users want to be able to access on your website or on your network, these are all services. When you are remoting in to a file storage system or something like that, you might have noticed that it's very slow at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning when everyone is checking their emails or everyone is remoting in to do a certain task at a certain time. This is because our wine bottle, as I said, can only pour out at a certain rate. A DDoS attack, or a denial of service attack, is going to be trying to block that flow and trying to slow it down for the rest of you, not just when everyone is legitimately trying to access it, but at all times. And these are going to be, technically speaking, very complicated attacks, but for our analogy, they're trying to put a cork in your wine bottle and stop the flow entirely. Some of you, when you see the word types when referred to a DDoS or a hacking attack, might just switch off or become a little bit untoward. Don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about them in any great detail. I am just going to be talking about them in the most simple forms in our analogy of wine glasses and wine users. So, when I'm talking about a volume attack, I'm talking about a lot of very small corks trying to go into the bottle at the same time. This is normally a home user's computer that has been infected with some kind of malware or virus and is used by the attacker to be pointed at the target. Whether that be your website, your file storage, anything like that, any of those services that I mentioned earlier, and try and jam up that flow with a lot of very small connections, so a lot of small corks. Our application attack. This is a slightly more refined attack. So this one will look like a lot of legitimate users. Instead of just trying to connect and say, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, like a volume attack does, an application attack will start requesting information. If it is against a website, it might start scanning through every page on your website in rapid succession, just trying to look like a real user, but trying to get as much data and as much coverage of that wine bottle, of that network flow as possible. These can be used at the same time in symbiosis so that you could have a lot of small connections that look like real users. And again, I'll use a website because it's easiest for most people to understand what it looks like. It's the equivalent of you going to the next page button on Google and clicking it about 150 times, and the website will then slowly load up each page as it gives it to you. That's what it's using when both of these attacks are in the same way, and you can have thousands of computers that are all doing that at the same time. So what actually is a DOS attack? So a DOS attack, or denial of service, is an interruption to the computer network or service. So this is an illegal, or can be an illegal way of preventing access to the computer. So the computer, or service, or wine glass is anything that the user wants to access. So it can be your website, but also denial of service attacks can be launched against any other service that you are running. Your emails, against any service that you may provide, such as file transfer, file storage, VPNs, all of these things that you are probably using without you realizing it. And all they are trying to do with a DOS attack is slow down the amount of liquid that can be poured out of the bottle, or the amount of traffic that can go through the internet. So when they are attacking your network, they are just trying to put their thumb halfway over the end of the bottle most of the time. Because if you think about it, if you put your thumb halfway over the end of the bottle, the liquid slows down. If you put your thumb all the way over the end of the bottle, the liquid completely stops. So if you have a large number of real users trying to get wine out of your bottle, and it is using more than half of the flow, if then an attacker or a threat actor comes and uses up the other half of the flow, means that your network stops. There's no more liquid to be given to the next user that comes. Because they're not trying to block the flow all the way. They're just trying to slow it down enough that the next computer in line can't access the service. This is different to another attack that we'll cover later, which is distributed denial of service. So let's just talk a little bit about why they do what they do. Why a threat actor will decide to go after your company. Predominantly, it's because they want some money. Money to a hacker is normally paid in Bitcoin, which is an online currency. You may have heard about it in the news, but that isn't important as why they will be trying to do it to you. Some companies are more susceptible to these threats. So a company will receive an email saying, please give us X amount of money if you don't want your site to be DDoSed. And just because you receive this email doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to happen. They could be sending hundreds or thousands of emails out just to every company, trying to get one person to pay the money without them having to do anything. This is remarkably effective. But when they're trying to do it to you, if you are a betting company, right around the Grand National or the Formula One Prix or any major sporting event, if they take your website down for an hour, that's a huge loss of revenue, especially if there's a major sporting event on. Some companies are less susceptible to this. So if you're a small company that only holds your emails online, you being DOS attacked or DDoS attacked has less of an effect monetarily than some of these major corporations that conduct all of their business online. Then there's the other reasons. If they aren't after money, they may just have a problem with your company. So we'll call it an axe to grind. They could be someone who used to be an employee or someone who just doesn't like the way that you conduct your business. The problem with a DDoS attack is the services can be rented for as low as £20 online. So they can have literally any reason to go after your company. And it's remarkably hard to prevent. But there are methods to prevent it. So what is a distributed denial of service attack or a distributed DOS attack? So distributed is just meaning more than one. So one cork is attacking your network or trying to cover your flow. A distributed attack is more than one. So you could have 10, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. All of these would just be classified as a singular DDoS attack. It has much more of an impact, as you can imagine, because there is a lot more users or corks trying to block your network flow. So when all of these computers are attempting to block it, it's harder to prevent them doing a DOS attack because they're coming from all over the world, meaning that it's incredibly hard to pinpoint which are legitimate users and which aren't. Amazon recently has had the world's largest DDoS attack. So I know that we were using wine and liquid as an analogy earlier, but at this point, this kind of is starting to fall away a little bit when we're talking about numbers on the internet. So we'll call it 2.3 terabits or 230 gigabytes. They are just transferring it between a large number and a small number, something that's more easily understandable. So our average computer hard drives are between 500 gigabytes and a terabyte. This attack was the equivalent of sending your entire capacity of your hard drive, if it was filled with pictures, videos, music, everything like that, every 2 to 4 seconds. So that's a huge amount of data. All of this was mitigated. And when I'm saying mitigated, I mean the process of blocking the IPs and blocking the computers that the data is coming from. If you look at the bottom graph, you can see that the red line is always below the green line. So what this means is the overall traffic that was coming in and out of GitHub's servers, websites, everything like that was less than their overall. So they were allowing genuine traffic through without any network slowdown and preventing almost the entirety of the DDoS attack. So this means that the company managed to keep going and experience very little slowdown. So what you're looking at here is a live stream at the time of recording of 200 of the 700 main DDoS attacks in the world. So these are coming from all over the world and going all over the world. So if we just have a look at one in particular, which is the biggest at this moment, so this is against New Zealand, a single server website service hosted in New Zealand, and this is 12 gigabytes of information. So a huge amount of wine bottles and a huge amount of corks going in and out of these servers in New Zealand. These could just be against your website, your VPN, or any service that you run. It doesn't just have to be against any target out there. Could happen against you. The attack that you just witnessed, when I'm talking about gigabytes per second, it's the equivalent of someone building the Hoover Dam right in front of your wine bottle. In 95% of cases, or even more, there is no way that your data will ever be able to be accessed if you are a small to medium-sized business until the attack is over. Because of this huge amount of data that is being directed at your server, most servers will say, or websites, have 100 megabit. So 12 gigabytes is 120 times more than your server can handle. So 120 corks all being tried to force into the end of your singular wine bottle. So it makes it incredibly hard to then be able to mitigate the attack. These huge botnets, is what they're called, can be rented or made within a matter of hours. £20 can get you a reasonable sized botnet to shut down most medium websites. And if you are getting one like the scale that we saw attacking that server in New Zealand, they will shut down the target website.